Hi, I'm Glenn and I'm from Interfilm. We're a national charity. We work across the UK, working with schools and out of school settings, working with children between the ages of 5 and 19, trying to get young people to watch films, to write about films in reviews and similar, to make films, to talk about films, and also to think about having films in the career in the film industry. Today, I'm doing a presentation and setting you a bit of a challenge. I'm going to be looking at a brief history of film, archive, and that challenge will be about a time capsule. So on with a brief history of film. Now, early inventions in moving image. A series of inventions led up to the first recorded moving image in the late 1800s, beginning with optical toys that gave the illusion of movement. So we've got three examples here. Here are a fumatrope, which is basically, it's a piece of paper with a different image on each side. And when you spin them really quickly, the image joins together. And you've got a flick book. I'm sure you've all used a flick book before, where you kind of draw a matchstick man or woman on lots of different pages, and then you flick the image, flick the book really quickly, and it looks like the character's moving. And then we have an apparatus from the 18th century, which is a zoetrope. Now, a zoetrope is an apparatus which has lots of different photographs spaced within a circle. And then within that apparatus, there's little slits that you actually look within. You spin it round and it looks like there's movement going around there. Now, these toys led to the very first moving image, which then led to the very first film. Now, the first ever recorded images were used by scientists. Now, in 1882, doctor and engineer Etienne Jules Marey invented the chronophotographic gun to help study movement of the body. Thomas Edison built one of the first film cameras in 1888, the kinetograph, and it took photographs quickly, one after the other, on a strip of film. And people could watch the film by looking through a peephole in the machine called a kinetoscope. And they would be at big fairs and big kind of festivals in towns, villages, cities, right across the world. French brothers Auguste and Louis Lumiere also developed a type of camera called the cinematograph. And this combined a camera and a projector. So the film could be projected onto a screen like in modern day cinemas. And this meant more than one person could watch at the same time. And this would be projected for the first time on say, for example, on the wall of a village hall, or inside a tent on the wall. And I'm going to show you a clip from one of their films from 1895 called The Arrival of a Train. Now, how do you think audiences reacted to this for the first time? It's the first time they would have seen cinema. Well, audiences, when they seen that for the first time, screamed and ran out of those tents and village halls because they thought it was an actual train coming towards them, because they'd never seen anything like that before. Much like when you see 3D today, except I don't think we run out of the cinema screaming when we see 3D, but it had such a huge impact on kind of cinema audiences, those very first ones. Now, a very famous film of the 1900s is George Méliès' A Trip to the Moon. It's one of the first ever science fiction films, and it's about a group of astronomers who go on a trip to the moon. And the film features loads of editing and special effects, and that had never been seen before. I'm going to show you a little clip from the film now, and I want you to see if you can find those editing points within this little clip. So, did you spot them? That's right. So the first edit was when the character goes to pick up the character sat on the throne. and they did the edit there, changed the actor into a dummy so he could pick it up and throw it onto the floor. And as he threw it onto the floor, and there was a big puff of smoke, there was another cut there, so they could remove the dummy. And that was the first time some of editing techniques like that was ever used in film. Now, as we move into the 1910s and into the 1920s, silent movie became hugely popular. And one of the biggest stars of silent movie was Charlie Chaplin. Originally from London, he was a vaudeville star when he was a child, traveling right across the UK and then over to America. And he ended up being in silent movies, and he is renowned as being perhaps the most famous silent movie star there is. So let's have a little look at kind of one of his films. So, did you notice some style in that particular film? The style that was used in a lot of silent movies was slapstick. Slapstick because it was an over-exaggerated movement. Because there was no talking in films at the time, then a lot of the acting was over the top to kind of give over the kind of tell the story better. And that comes from kind of the vaudeville time. A lot of the actors that were in silent movies at the time were from the vaudeville background on stage, where that was the style of acting and clowning about, and it's all got a background in that area. As we moved into the 1920s, that's when films with sound and talking started to come through. They would have synchronized sound. Now, The Jazz Singer in 1927 was the first film to have synchronized sound, and that meant sound could be heard in time with action on the screen. Audience called these films the talkies because they could finally hear the actors talking. Now, how do you think people reacted to this at the time? And do you think some people would have preferred silent film? And why would they? Well, people loved the talkies. They thought they were fantastic. It became a hugely popular kind of format of film, and eventually overtook silent movies. Silent movies sadly died out, but some people did prefer silent movies. They loved the style of that, but also kind of with some of the silent movie actors and movie stars, once they started to talk in talkies, their voices just weren't suited for talkies because they had squeaky voices and similar, and unfortunately some of those actors, their careers died after talkies came in. Move on to the 1930s, and Technicolor was introduced. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was made in 1937. That was the first color animated feature, and it was the first one by Disney as well, and I'm sure you've all seen it. In 1939, we had The Wizard of Oz. It was one of the most popular live action films that featured Technicolor at the time. And those of you that's seen it, you'll remember the start of the film is all in black and white until Dorothy is in a house that lands in Oz. And as she opens the door, the whole film turns into color, which is just a very magical moment on the big screen. The 1930s and 60s were known as the golden age of Hollywood. Technology improved, films impressed audiences more and more. It just became more and more successful. Hollywood studios made lots of films which audiences just loved to see in the cinema up on that big screen. Hollywood itself, which is in California, was the home of film because it had lots of sunshine and space for studios to move into and expand within. And most of the studio system still exists, and most of the businesses are still based over in Hollywood at the moment. The studios, those big studios, they control the whole filmmaking process, from the filming, the technical side, the actors, the directors, and the cinemas themselves where the films were distributed to. And actors were contracted to studios for lots of money. They became famous overnight, but it also meant that studios had control over the actors' lives and also over their images, and something which is only recently changed in the last 20, 30 years. Now, the golden age didn't just happen in America. Countries around the world were also very, very successful. Over the years, lots of countries have developed their own style of filmmaking. Here's just a few examples. So in the UK, we had a lot of movie makers in the 40s and 50s, Elstree Studios and similar, who produced their own films. Metropolis, which is a Fritz Lang movie from Germany. So in the 20s and 30s in Germany, they made some fantastic films and had their own style, using lots of special effects. Japan developed the Rashomon kind of style of film, which are great epic tales in the 1950s and 60s. The French and Italian movie industry in the 50s and 60s developed new styles, new storytelling, looking at different subjects, focusing on poverty, on kind of youth culture. Bollywood was developed from the 50s and 60s onwards. If you've never seen a Bollywood movie, go and see one. It's full of fun, colour and song, some of the best fun movies out there. The African film industry, Senegal is one of the centres of the film industry in Africa, as is Nigeria, which is their movie industry over there has been nicknamed Nollywood, in a hark back to Hollywood, just the same way that Bollywood does with kind of like name as well. Now we move up to modern day. So you've got CGI revolution. Now new technology like digital cameras and CGI has completely changed the way films are made. It's made it a cheaper process. It's allowed films to be made more quickly. It's allowed kind of amateur and independent filmmakers to make films outside of the studio system. It's led to animated characters that look more lifelike as well. So I don't know if anyone's seen The Lion King, the new Lion King, or The Jungle Book, where all the animals in that film are all CGI created, but they all look real life. And it's also allowed kind of film studios and movie makers to create massive action sequences, which are bigger, louder, more realistic and impressive. So if anyone's seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies or some of the Harry Potter movies, when there's the big battle scenes, most of those scenes are done, especially from those that are from long shots, are done through CGI and don't actually have any actors in them. Now we're going to look at archive. Now, what is archive? Now, archive film, it doesn't simply mean black and white film. Archive film embraces many different types of film because it refers to material held and reserved in an archive. Now, we have archives right across the country. The main film archive for the Northwest is based in Manchester, which is the Northwest Film Archive. And depending on the archive, this material can span the history of cinema and television, might include fiction, documentary, newsreels, industrial, education and charity films, government films, artist films and video, political and campaign films, even advertising, travel and anthropological films, and amateur film and home movies. So the films that you're making now at the moment that you put on Instagram and TikTok and similar, they're actually the archive of the future. Because what you're doing, you're recording the day-to-day kind of activities, and then you're recording it as a video or a GIF or whatever it might be, and then you're putting that out there. And the archive that you're putting it onto at the moment is a social network. But we might collect those films exactly the same way that we do with other stuff. An invaluable source of social and cultural history is that film, are those films which are actually made on home movies through time as well. So The reason why for that is that they capture key moments in time whilst documenting stuff like traditions, people, and movements across the years. People can use archive in lots of different ways. They can adapt it, they can edit it, they can compile it. And there's lots of different ways that you can use archive. So the film I'm going to show you now is a film, an archive film, which has been compiled called Big City Stories, which looks at the history of Black people over 100 years in the UK. And you'll see kind of how kind of like music's been added to it, how it's been edited as well. And you see how archive film can be used in many, many different ways. So let's have a look at that. So, as you can see, kind of that music really drives that piece of archive film, and that would have just been film that's been recorded on old 16mm films, load of handheld home kind of like cameras, and given to an archive in London for them to actually start to compile it many years later, telling the story of the people who lived in those areas and perhaps the issues that they've had to deal with at that time. Now, a lot of that archive is actually kept on a national website where you can access it. It's called the BFI Britain on Film website, which you can find by going to bfi.org.uk, Britain on Film. And you can use the search function to search for a postcode or place of your choice. So you just simply click on Explore the Map when you go to that website. And then it just takes you to a search button where you can type in a postcode or address into the search bar, and then it will bring up all the films which are available in that area and stuff that you're looking for. I've looked up Chester, and there's a couple of hundred kind of pieces of film there, but then you can search more within it to look for certain decades. The earliest one that's on there, I think, is in the late 1890s or 1902, which is just some images of people having a nice day on the River Dee, going up and down the groves in Chester, right up into I think it's the 1980s, where you've got a group of school kids going to a day out at Chester Zoo. So do take a look on that Britain on Film website, see if there's something which is in your actual location itself, and do let us know whether you find anything. So we are on to your challenge, my time capsule. So we're going to challenge you to build a time capsule. You may have seen stuff like Blue Peter years ago and stuff where they make a time capsule, put things in it, and then dig a hole in the ground. It's not to be opened for 50 or 100 years. So your task is to make a time capsule with 5 items within it, and for people in 100 years to dig up and find out about 2020. And they need to, within that time capsule, find out about things about where you live. It must contain, I'd say, at least one example of a film. So it could be a film that's come out of the cinema, a film that you've watched on television recently, or anything like that, and at least one document. So it could be a newspaper or anything like that. What we'd like you to do is do a time capsule one spot shot film as well. And what we want you to do is to plan and create that one-shot film that would tell people finding your time capsule about 2020 and where you live. So basically, if you've got a smartphone or a tablet, it's just to go around and just record a film, just showing where you live, or showing kind of, it could be 30 seconds, it could be a minute, it could be longer. But the thing about it, there's no editing and no camera movements. It's just a one-shot film. You can do this in pairs or as a group, or you can do it as individuals. It's up to you how you do it. Here's just some tips on how to make your film. So one-shot film. Always hold your camera so it is this way. So it is aspect ratio, not this way. I know we all look at cameras and phones this way, but make sure it's this way. So almost like when you're looking at a television screen. So make sure you hold your camera around that way. Camera positioning, where's the best place to position the camera to get a clear shot? So don't hold your camera where kind of like you've got a tree in front of somebody's face if you want to capture someone's face, or where a bus is going to go past in front of you, unless you want to capture the bus, of course. Camera framing, would a long shot or a close-up suit best for the activity you've got in mind? So it's a long shot, obviously you want to capture the whole kind of like environment that's in front of you. It's close up, you want to capture kind of the emotions on somebody's face. Lighting, so just be careful about the lighting as well when you're capturing stuff. If you're trying to capture something in particular, make sure there's no sunlight behind the person that you're trying to film, because it would just bleach out the whole picture. And sound, if you're using kind of like a smartphone to capture it, the microphone is actually on the microphone's actually on the phone. So if you're trying to capture someone talking from a distance away, you're not going to capture that. So have a think about that. And stability as well. So if you want a kind of steady shot, there's different ways that you can do that. So you can rest your arms on your elbows on a table and hold your phone to do it that way, or on a table or shelf or a wall or whatever it might be as well. So if you've got a tripod, if your phone fits onto a tripod of some sort, you can do that as well. A selfie stick. Yeah, selfie stick might work as well. So that is the end of the challenge and the end of the presentation. So what I'd like you to do is that once you've pulled together your 5 items for your time capsule and your one-shot film, I want you to then send them to Hope Streets. We'll put the email address on this film, or just kind of on the web page that this is on, and we'll choose the best time capsule, and you'll get a little prize from Interfilm for that. Apart from that, thank you so much for listening and watching this presentation today. And please go and explore Archive and the history of film. Thanks. And don't forget that you can reach us on Twitter by following us at Interfilm_North. Over on Instagram, we've got our youth account, which is at Get Into Film, as is our YouTube account, which is Get Into Film as well. Loads of great interviews there with celebrities and people who work in the film industry, giving you some tips. And the Britain on Film website, which is just visit the BFI or search for Britain on Film, or follow the website link that's there. And if you just want to give us a look out, just go to interfilm.org and find out more about us.